Welcome back to the show, everybody. And guess what? We got Linda P. Jones, Wall Street veteran, in the house. Oh, we got so much to talk about. Dollar collapse. What are we talking about here? Petrodollar, death of that, and so much more. BRICS coalition. Things are moving much quicker than you think. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's going to be a great one. Look who we have with us. It's Linda P. Jones. Linda, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Brad. It's excellent to be back with you. I'm so excited for our talk today.
I tell you, I am too, and we just touched on it. One of the things that I wish we could do is like just be able to have people see the few minutes before you and I actually go live and see how hard and just like the concentrated effort that we're putting into this content. I'm kidding to everyone listening. Our lives are so busy that when we get together, we're just like calling plays on the sideline and audibles. And we're like, you got it. We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do this. And here we are. The show's here. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Linda, where do you want to start today?
Well, I just want to say it's so easy to talk with you because I feel like we're on the same page with so many things. And I listened to your excellent video this morning where you were really queuing everything up about the weakening dollar and the BRICS coalition and what's going on with Saudi Arabia. There's so many things happening, the lack of liquidity in the markets. I want to kind of start a little bit more back at the beginning and sort of put the pieces in place again to bring us back to today. I think that would probably be the best thing to do. So just going back to COVID, when the Fed started creating more money, and that became an issue, which when you have a lot of money created, it can really devalue a currency. So we started to see some changes there. And then we saw where inflation started to roar because of what had gone on with Russia and the sanctions. And the energy prices started skyrocketing, which created inflation. And that inflation came through the economy. Then the Fed started raising interest rates to try to combat the inflation. So partly the cause of it, now partly trying to fix it, but they're fixing it too fast by raising interest rates too much, too fast. It's destroying the liquidity around the world to the point where the IMF and the UN came out publicly to the Fed and said, please stop raising interest rates. You're wrecking the global economy.
I'll tell you, you're blowing my mind because it's exactly the lead up to where we are. What do you see now? Because you couldn't do a better run up to where we're at here, Linda. What do you see now?
Okay, so what happened with the sanctions with Russia was that the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, formed a coalition. When Russia was kicked out of the SWIFT system, they already had the CIPS system, which was an alternate clearing system. And because they had been waiting for this moment, if you will, knowing that SWIFT was used as a weapon and the dollar could be used as a weapon against countries. So they created an alternate system. So when Russia was thrown out of SWIFT, they were ready and they had a method to be trading with each other. So Russia went to China and said, hey, we'll trade energy with you. And China said, great, we need all that energy. And now Europe is left out in the cold. And of course, we've had the pipeline problem and just a nightmare for poor European people. But the big thing now is that Saudi Arabia is said to want to join up with the BRICS nations. The reason why that's so important is, as you said, the oil was always traded in US dollars, and that was an agreement with Saudi Arabia. And that allowed oil to be, number one, the most important commodity in the world. And number two, it allowed for the dollar to be the world's reserve currency. Well, if Saudi Arabia now goes over to the BRICS nations, and what if more countries, what if the whole rest of the world just about lines up with the BRICS and decides we don't want to be on the side of the dollar, we don't like the dollar having so much dominance, we want more equality. We want more, just like the video you played in your video this morning. The gentleman was saying more equality because we're going from a centralized economy where the dollar was central, where technology is allowing us to go to a decentralized economy and where we can have digital assets. And I believe it's more of a level playing field that we're going to.
I think you got it right on the money. And I'll tell you, to the point you're making about the idea that Saudi Arabia is considered joining BRICS, and they have MOUs, by the way, with BRICS, right, in South Africa. So it's not like just being talked about. Like they're taking some action here, and I think
memorandums of understanding, right?
Yes, indeed, and I think to the tune of what was it, $15 billion? I think I saw in the article. Or mentioned by the gentleman from South Africa there. So, there's very real things happening in that regard. So I want to bring into this idea because there's a couple things that we talk about often in our circles here where, to the tune you talked about, look, I mean, how devastating would it be to lose the status of the petrodollar, that all US dollar is not being used to buy and sell oil anymore, right? What does that mean? What does that look like to you for us?
Well, it looks like we would have more inflation is what it looks like in the short term, because right now, of course, everybody has to convert to our currency. But what's happening is the dollar's getting so strong that it is wreaking havoc on the rest of the planet because commodities are priced in dollars and oil is priced in dollars. And so, and many emerging market debt countries, their total debt is priced in dollars. So when the dollar gets stronger, that means their debt is getting bigger. And it means that their energy prices are getting bigger. Their inflation is getting terrible right now because the dollar is getting so strong. So it's hurting all these other countries, which is why the UN and the IMF were saying stop raising interest rates, because when you raise interest rates, that strengthens the dollar even more. And so what's happened is that strong dollar means that nobody wants to buy treasuries. So Janet Yellen came out and said, hey, there's no bid for 30-year treasuries. There's no bid for 15-year treasuries, meaning no investors want to buy them because interest rates are going up and they're anticipating they're going to keep going up. So who wants to lose money? Because when interest rates go up, bond valuations go down, you're going to lose money. So there's just nobody buying those. So there's now a lack of liquidity, a big vacuum around treasury bonds. But also, other countries are selling their treasuries because they're trying to boost up their currency value. So Japan, for example, selling treasuries, trying to make the yen stronger because it's at a 24-year low. We have the pound and the euro at parity with the dollar. So we have these currencies that are weaker, and that's causing terrible inflation for them. Now, we don't really have that issue because the dollar, like I said, commodities are priced in dollars. So we don't have an exchange rate that we have to convert into like other countries do. But if, let's say, the BRICS all join together and say, well, we're going to form a trade coalition and we're going to name the terms of this and we're not going to use the dollar. If the dollar basically is rejected around the world, that would cause the dollar to plummet. That would cause weakness and would cause the dollar to plummet, which would mean that we would have to eventually go to a new system and we would have more inflation if the dollar is plummeting. But I think where we're going is that if the BRICS do abandon the dollar. And there was an article that said China wanted to dump treasuries and dump dollars. There's different information out there that says they're looking at possibly, I'm thinking this might be a coordinated situation where they just one day say, we're not going to use the dollar anymore. That's going to force a new Bretton Woods, basically, where we all have to get together, sit around the table and say, okay, we need to go to a new system. And I think what the BRICS are saying is we want a system of more fairness. We want a system of a level playing field. And they could do that by taking commodities and using commodities to give value, like you were saying in your video this morning, to give value to a currency. They could take gold, silver, platinum, palladium, iridium, oil, maybe 10 or 20 different commodities and use that to provide value, because all countries, have something that could be of value. And then they price it in gold. So again, they're not favoring one currency. And then they decide that all countries can use their own currencies and use something like the XRP ledger, which can do cross-border payments, can convert from any currency into any other currency, allow local people, just like you said in your video again this morning, that local currencies could trade with each other. I mean, it's lining up to be the perfect solution.
It really is. And I see this obviously taking time. This is, in my mind, this is not a next Tuesday at 12, right? But I see the world headed this way. And to talk about one of the things that you just covered is the idea and understanding that what if we were to see a massive collapse of the dollar? Like we're seeing the dollar run up now, the stress, like you had mentioned, it's putting on all the other countries and their currencies. And then they could get into a situation where they end up selling what U.S. bonds they got because they know they're trash anyway, just to try to salvage their own currency, right? And I think what you really laid out is I think it's called the milkshake theory, like where you get this run up, a melt up, and then a possible crash down on the dollar. Is that what you were basically describing there, it sounds like?
There's that. And remember the video that I found where he was talking about the milkshake theory and then the fire alarm got pulled right in the middle of it?
Just so happened to have a fire alarm get pulled right when he's breaking all that down. Well, here's one of the things that I am concerned about. We talk about it, often on the channel, but it's, a black swan event, right? And I believe that Saudi Arabia announcing that they would join BRICS in the next year or two, or whatever it would become a black swan event. Because I believe you're going to see everybody understand what that will mean. And let's all in the audience know this too, if you're not aware. BRICS by itself, without Saudi Arabia, is 40% of the world's population. This is a conversation, right? This is a real conversation we're having here. So if we see some kind of real cascading effect from Saudi Arabia joining in inflation, collapse, otherwise of the dollar, I think we really set the stage for a couple conversations, Linda. One, ushering in this new multipolar, multi-asset backed system that you've described already. And two, I think what we're really looking at also is what happens to the bondholder, Linda, that is holding this bond and getting all of this loss that's happening, that I can't sell it if we're moving to something new, right? You have to somehow figure out how to make the bondholder whole, right? How do you deal with that? Or do they just lose?
So my sound went out as you were describing all of that.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Here's what I'll say in short. If we see like a cascading damaging effect if Saudi Arabia commits and moves through and joins BRICS, whether it's a year or 2 years or whatever, if we have a real bad effect to the dollar on that, you have to ask yourself, what happens to the bondholders around the world? Are we talking about a scenario that's not only moving to a multipolar asset-backed system, but some kind of debt jubilee as well, some kind of Nasara Jasara? What are we talking about here?
I think that one thing we know is that there's so much debt in the world that something has to be done with the debt. It cannot be repaid. Even if generations were taxed, it can never be repaid. So there has to be a decision somewhere to do something with the debt. And, years ago, they used to have debt jubilees. I don't know how all that worked. I don't know the details, but they have done it in the past. Maybe that's where we're going. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either, but I do feel like if we get some kind of real black swan event or some kind of cascading effect that's really damaging, because what we're talking about now is the crisis is a monetary crisis, right? It is a money problem, and it is a problem for the central banks of the world. It is not like the last crisis we had in 08, 09, right? This isn't about real estate swaps. Everything will be affected because the problem this time is in the money itself.
Right. But here's the thing. When you're dealing with money, especially globally, nothing can happen by accident.
That's right.
Everything must be planned, coordinated, practiced. There is nothing left up to chance when you are talking about money. Now, it's unfortunate that we have a system where there are some self-serving billionaires who do things for money and have strings on people in politics for money. And I bring this up because it just gives an example of what is sometimes done by some powerful people behind the scenes. You know, back in the early 2000s, when we had a change to a tax deduction for second loans, I thought, well, why are they making second loans tax deductible? All that's going to do is make everybody pile up with debt. And then when we have a recessionary downturn, people are going to lose their homes. Like, that's a no-brainer for people to see the future and why that's such a bad decision. But who won in that case? The banks won because they got to make new loans and they got to earn interest. The politicians won because the lobbyists paid them a lot of money to probably make that happen. And the everyday person is the one who lost out. But that was an example of billionaires who are using their own self-interest to enrich themselves. And I think this is all being exposed right now. Is the reason I bring that up, is that we're seeing that people are not necessarily doing things for the benefit of the everyday people. And this is being exposed. I think we are seeing all the corruption. And that's why I want to give hope to people that I know that things look terrible and things look bad right now. And we're all very worried about the corruption that we see, the compromised people. We're seeing, Congress being able to trade insider trades. We're seeing the Fed making insider trades. I mean, we're seeing the corruption. It's all being shown to us. But I think it's being shown to us because we're being shown we don't want a centralized Fed raising interest rates. We don't want them making financial decisions for us. We don't want to be in the same system we've been in, because actually nothing got solved from 2008. Everything just got worse and the debt got bigger. And, one lowly person went to jail, but everybody still kept their jobs that created that whole nightmare, although maybe some people didn't, but a lot of the executives kept their jobs. So we're back in the same situation in the sense that it's a bad situation. We have more debt. The situation is more dire. It looks terrible, but I do believe there's a plan. And I do believe, because we are in a new technological age where we can go from centralization to decentralization, we can have nobody in control. We can have a level playing field for all countries. They can trade in their own currency backed by value, which we have to get out of this fiat system that allows for unlimited creation of money, which devalues currencies. We have to get out of that, get back to value behind currency so that we can trade with each other. That's going to bring world peace into this equation.
Oh, so well said. Now, with that being said, I want to cue up a clip now from a recent Blockstars podcast with David Schwartz and Anthony Welfare from Ripple. And I know that you've heard this clip, but I'm going to play this clip again for us, and I'll make sure that you can hear it too, Linda. I know I have some audio things here. Let me cue that up for us very quickly. Okay, so here's the clip, Linda, and it's from the podcast. And I encourage everybody to go listen to the Blockstars podcast with David and Anthony in there. It is fantastic from beginning to end. But one of the things I wanted to bring up is kind of what we touched on, but in a bit of a different angle here from David, where he talks about the dollar dominance issue and a real credible threat from another bad actor around the world, let's say a Russia or a China, right? Well, matter of fact, let's let him tell you. So listen to this right here.
Like a threat to dollar dominance, for example. Like if there was some credible threat to dollar dominance like that, like I know it's kind of a fantasy here, but like if there was some other country, let's say a large country like, China or Russia that like implemented some system that was some sort of threat to dollar dominance, then you could see the United States responding. If they thought that a technological solution was the best solution, you would see a priority that you wouldn't see under any other scenario, despite their natural conservatism.
Yeah.
Linda?
Is that just the perfect setup for XRP and the XRP ledger, or what?
I just can't see it any other way. And I mean, I get what he says. It's just a fantasy here. But let me just throw out a few things here. And I know that you know all of this. But UK this morning, Liz Truss resigned. That's obviously over the problems they're having, you know, the illiquidity issue, right? We know Japan's having problems, and the list goes on and on. Europe has got all kinds of problems in front of it, let alone just because it's winter and they get their resources from Russia. You know, U.S. has been illiquid for a long time. That's why we printed $10 trillion in the last 30 some months now, right? Linda, what do you think about that scenario?
Like I said, you cannot have things just happen when it comes to money. And the reason why David hit that nail on the head with, oh, it's a fantasy scenario, but what if? No, it's happening right now, just as he described. Russia, China, Brazil, India, South Africa, Saudi Arabia, they're all forming a coalition that is putting dollar hegemony at risk. And it is all planned. In my opinion, it's all planned.
It has to be, in my mind, and that doesn't mean that there isn't loose orchestration about it. Plan means like we know eventually one day we're going to be doing this, right? You can see the world moving that way. You know, it could be that kind of plan, right? Not like it. I think what's important here is that fantasy is looking like reality a lot these days. What I'm actually seeing, and I've often said that XRP was not designed for 65 and sunny out, right? XRP was something that's designed to be a solution for the collapsed system.
That's right. And the IMF has been prompting us that a new Bretton Woods is needed. Mm-hmm. That was the meeting where all the countries got together, after World War II, and they decided to make the dollar the world's reserve currency. And now we're moving away from that centralized system into a decentralized system. We could use an American technology, hint, hint, that would just be perfect to allow all countries to compete on a level playing field using their own currency rather than people having to use the dollar. And this is the world that we're going into, which creates more like level competition for people, more prosperity around the world, and I believe world peace. You don't have a need to dominate or to protect a currency because it's the world's reserve currency. You are going to a more centralized situation, and I think it's going to ultimately bring very positive things for the world.
I agree too, and I want to throw this out for people to just have it to think about. When they see the stablecoin legislation needed badly here in the United States. It's so important to me because I believe everything's getting tokenized in the future. And if that's the case, if it's not a security and it's not a crypto, it's going to be a stablecoin of some kind or something thereof. And they're going to be so important because it'll be a way of organizing the liquidity, whether it be in a domestic payment system like FedNow, or whether it's in TIPS or SIPS or whatever. And you organize all that stablecoin liquidity across all those many different protocols that will exist in the world, right? Just like email providers, I would imagine. And then you are able to access that domestic liquidity off those rails with something like maybe an XRP ledger or ILP and organize it to where you can draw on it whenever you need to without creating a dry pocket in any one area, and take it in a balanced way to really have a more measured, scalable world going forward in the future, and not creating this, ever-going cyclical nightmare of liquidity issues and printing of money like we see now with the Fed as the global reserve currency.
That's right. And I want to share with you some quotes from Brad Garlinghouse, something he said recently. So I listened to what Brad says very closely, and I think he is often indicating where we're going or what's happening. He gives us glimpses into the future. So he said, over the next years, you will see many financial transactions where a middleman sits, an intermediary. Those will get removed, and will use blockchain and other digital asset type technologies to remove that friction. And all of society will benefit from improving the efficiency of those systems.
That's powerful.
Doesn't that say it all?
It really says it all. And it is where we're going. And we bear witness to it almost daily. It feels like, whether it's a remittance company or small medium enterprise or some other financial institution around the world agreeing to use Ripple or XRP or some other solution.
Right. But I believe that what we have with the XRP ledger is so special. And I have to believe that this SEC piece of the puzzle, the fact that the rest of the world has the clarity on XRP as a currency, not as a security, and the US is the only one that has that tangled up right now, is for some kind of a reason that isn't totally clear to me at this moment, but I think will be made clear at some point.
I agree as well. And I certainly see it as a way to bullpen Ripple and XRP, make it look less attractive to the retail investor, because the financial institutions and the legacy systems in the United States government, I believe personally, it's my speculation and has been for a long time, that they know that they're going to use it and they don't want us to really see it as the shiny thing, right? That's how I see it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for the amazing videos that you do. I think the service that you're doing to the community is incredible. I just love listening to your videos and learn so much. And thank you so much for everything you do for all of us.
Well, likewise, Linda, I am privileged and honored to have you as a guest on the show. You have so much wealth and of knowledge in this area. It is so beneficial to all of us to get access to you, and I appreciate you doing it. We'll catch you on the next one. Thank you, Linda.
My pleasure.
Linda P. Jones, everybody, check it out.